Hey, welcome to my backyard. There's something over here I'd like to show you. Come with me for a minute. So this bush has drawn more blood than any other plant on my property. You know, for the last 11 years, I have driven my little old lawn tractor down this tree line, mowing the grass, and at least once a year, sometimes multiple times a year, I'll get stabbed by the thorns on this bush. Now, you might be saying, well, why don't you just take your chainsaw and cut it down? Actually, I can't. I can't because there's such a powerful reminder that comes to me every time I drive past this bush. I remember the very first time it stabbed me. I was driving past and the thorn reached out and it cut me across the head, and as the blood was beginning to come down my scalp, I felt like cursing my bad luck. But as I was putzing along on my little tractor on that spring morning, it was almost like I heard God say, "Doesn't feel so good, does it?" And that was just one thorn. Imagine a crown full. As I came around a second time, I remember I grabbed the bush and lifted it up so that I could drive under it, but I noted how long and sharp the thorns were. The next year, having learnt from my first encounter, I was careful to reach out and lift the thorny branch as I drove under, only to be stabbed by a second branch that had grown out over the past year. More blood, more pain, more remembering the crown that Jesus wore. Those tractor rides over the last 11 years of driving past here thinking about the crown of thorns actually has me asking questions of this thorn bush. Why a thorn bush? Was that just a convenient way that the soldiers had to torture Jesus? And why a crown? Was that just the ultimate in mockery? Or is there some sort of significance that goes a little deeper behind the thorns and the crown that Jesus wore? So I decided to go back into the Bible and find the very first usage of the word thorn. It shows up in chapter 3 of Genesis. Adam and Eve have just welcomed sin into the world. They've welcomed this virus of sin into the world. And Eve is cursed with the pain in childbirth and with conflict with her husband. And then Adam receives a curse as well. And we read it in verse 17. It says, "The ground is going to be cursed because of you. In all of your life, you will end up scratching a living from the ground, and it will grow thorns and thistles for you. And by the sweat of your brow, you will eat the food, and then you will return to the ground." So what we have here is we have these thorns that are the result of sin. And the thorns are intrinsically connected to sin, sorrow, and strife. I'm guessing that the soldiers had absolutely no idea that they were acting out the divine drama being written and produced by God himself, that would send a message to the whole world. And what a powerful message it was. When those soldiers stabbed that crown of thorns into Jesus' head on Good Friday, they weren't just being heartless and cruel. They were acting out what redemption actually looks like. Since the beginning of time, those thorns represented sin, sorrow, and strife. But as those soldiers were putting that crown of thorns on Jesus' head, actually something far more significant was happening. God the Father was putting sin, sorrow, and strife onto Jesus. In fact, in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21, Paul says, "God put the wrong on him who never did anything wrong, so that we could be made right with God." But the significance goes much further than that. Mark 15:17 says, "They dressed him in a purple robe, and they wove the branches into a crown and put it on his head. Then they saluted and taunted him, saying, 'Hail, King of the Jews.'" Those soldiers could not have declared more truth if they had tried. A crown represents authority, rulership, and ultimate supreme power. Good Friday was the coronation of Jesus as the authority, the ruler, the supreme power over sin, sorrow, and strife. That crown of thorns wasn't just Jesus meek and mild being bullied by a bunch of thugs. It was about God using a bunch of thugs who thought that they were bullies to crown him King of the universe, as the supreme authority over heartbreak, as the ruler over every disappointment, as the commander over every dark force, difficult moment, and debilitating mistake. God put sin, sorrow, and strife right on Jesus' head. And Jesus took that sin, sorrow, and strife to hell where it belongs, left it there, and blasted out of the grave on Easter Sunday morning, having replaced the crown of thorns with a crown of righteousness. And he did it so that no matter what thorny situation or state you would ever find yourself in, you would always remember that he is king of that too.